is advised.
And welcome on our safari drive, live from the middle of the African bush where the mysteries of the evening are waiting to be unfolded. This is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live. And a very good morning to all of you, and welcome on our sunrise safari live from Djuma Private Game Reserve, which is in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. My name is Jamie. This morning VM is on camera with me, and because you are all on a live safari, the most important part of this is that it is interactive, which means that you can send through your questions and your comments, and you can do that using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarthTV. And we've got all kinds of exciting things planned. I see Connor's up in the drone. I see some lights in the distance soaring around. Connor's just getting better and better at this. Look at that! Looks like a little miniature airplane. Our first sighting of the morning. Very cool. Flying in the dark. He's brave. Much braver than I would be. Connor does the most amazing things. So for those of you that are new to these live safaris, we have a live drone feed from broadcasting from the skies. And we have exciting plans for this morning. We're going to see if we can't find Queen Karula, the female leopard that deposited a large pile of scat outside our house this morning. Or last night, at some point. Brent was with her yesterday, and presumably she went off into the dead of night after the close of the sunset safari to hunt. And then we of course have the report of the buffalo distress call from heard on the Djuma Dam camera. I wonder whether or not some poor hapless buffalo fell victim to the lions last night. I have absolutely no idea where the Nkuhumas are or where they have been. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they've decided to return to Djuma once again. Alright, well, we trundle about in the dark, making sure I didn't miss the leopard tracks, because otherwise Brent is going to shout with me. Speaking of Brent, I think he'd like to say good morning. Let's head over to him.
Welcome to our cloud and cool sunrise safari. My name is Brent Smith. I have my good friend and fellow killer bee on camera, Brian Joubert. And of course, what is the thumb today, Brian?
Suit and tie.
Suit and tie, back to business, or in his Sunday best. Now, there's some leopard tracks here on quarantine, and unfortunately they got driven over early this morning. And I'm pretty sure this is from Karula. She was very close to here last night. I'm just going to have a quick look. And there's some very fresh dung that has also been driven over. If I show you there. Fortunately, I think tech department they drove over the dung, so the car has a very smelly tyre at the moment. But the tracks head in a sort of southwesterly direction, that way across quarantine. The Impala, all quite relaxed. So I think she has moved through this area, probably looking at the freshness of the dung an hour or two ago. I think it's a good idea to check around Ingwe Alley and that area. Now, I've done a loop around towards the pan looking for lion tracks. I know there was a buffalo distress call heard, and unfortunately no sign of any tracks. And we also switched off and listened for a while, no sign of any lions feeding. Maybe the buffalo escaped, or maybe it was a bit further than we thought. Let's have a quick look over here. Interesting. Now, while we continue to keep checking for leopards, lions and the like, let's go across to the man in the office, the man in the tent, except this time he's looking at us from above.
My office is currently suspended above my office. My name is James Hendry, and that is the view brought to you by the drone commander Connor Teagues, freshly returned from his leave. And that, everybody, is hopefully where the sun will emerge from fairly shortly. You can see a bit of light there. I think that's... Oh, no, that's you. I actually cannot see the orientation of where he's pointing now. Huh? There's a pan there. Very confusing. One of the vehicles you can see out there. I've lost my mind. I'm sure that's looking due east. That's probably Zoe's Road. Anyway, it's a gorgeous view of the low-felt morning. You can see there quite a lot of grey clouds scudding across the place, but I don't think it's going to last for very long. I'm hoping that it will burn off. I think the weather report, which is usually a foul and contemptible lie, says it's going to be relatively clear today. So hopefully that will be the case. Ah, yes, now I can see where we are. That goes down to the pan. That was east. Actually, that light is not to the east. That light is off yonder. Those little specks of light there are on the western horizon. That's the dubious settlement of Hoedspruit, where Brent and Jamie live, followed by Bushbuck Ridge. That's actually really cool. Just hold there, Connor, if you can. That line of lights there along the ridge is called Bushbuck Ridge. And it's an enormous community. Now remember that there are probably about 5 million people living on the borders of the Kruger National Park on the western fringes in rural settlements, and well, they're now electrified rural settlements, and that in the very, very far distance, probably I would say at least 60 to 100 miles as the crow flies, is where those people live, in communities on the western fringes. Very nice. Thank you, Connor. Excellent job. I think that light closer by is probably the light of one of the lodges, maybe Simbambali. As we swing around now, and now that is the eastern view, in fact, of the sun hopefully about to come up. How are you all today? I hope you're all very well. I'm in the tent. David is back with me as we gear up towards the TV show tomorrow morning. David, how's your foot?
Oh, it's better.
Good. David has a wart on his foot.
Yeah.
We're not sure how he got it. We're all now showering in rubber boots for fear of the same fate. Anyway, that is not relevant to our show. Maybe we should put it under the microscope. What do you think, David?
Yeah, why not?
Would you like to see your wart under the microscope? Excellent. Okay, we might try that a bit later. Hashtag Safari Live is how you talk to us. Questions at WildEarthTV, and we'll be finding hopefully some interesting things during the course of the show. The one thing that I do want to do, again, if you were watching yesterday afternoon, we will do a couple of repeats today. I want to try and perfect watching the tadpole underneath the microscope. That was really quite cool. And over the course of the rest of the show, we're going to try and keep one or two of these tadpoles alive and see if we can't watch the process of their metamorphosis, which I think is going to be very exciting indeed. So, while we do these rehearsals, of course, you will be privy to the practices and the rehearsals of how we watch those tadpoles growing up into frogs. We don't know what kind of frogs they were. We just have a whole bucket load of tadpoles, so we'll have a look at them a little bit later, and then we will attempt to look at a whole lot of living things under the microscope as opposed to those things that are dead. So that is my plan for the morning, and I do hope that the Nkuhuma Pride will make some kind of a return, and perhaps also Karula and the two youngsters, because now is the time we want them on an impala kill for tomorrow morning. Good. Excellent stuff. The first thing we can look at under the microscope today is what I think was probably the nest of a spider. Well, not so much the nest, but perhaps the egg sac of a spider. And that egg sac seems to have hatched, so we'll have a look at it under the trusty old microscope. There it is. And what you can see, if I focus in there, you can see that slit on the right-hand side. That slit, I think, is where the little spiderlings emerged from. Now, which spiders they were, I don't know, but it was underneath the bark. So it's almost certainly or almost certain, that it was something like well, it definitely wasn't a violin spider, because she carries the egg sac, the violin spider, so I don't know what it was. Did you see that little thing crawl under there, David?
I did.
What do you think it was? I don't know. And then our click beetle, I don't know if you saw our click beetle from yesterday, but I'm going to show him to you again, because I'm going to try and get him to perform for TV as well. He had an amazing display of his actual clicking underneath the microscope, which was very exciting indeed. So I'll just quickly retrieve him. Sorry, David, I should have been more prepared than this, but you know, things got a little bit stressed out as we became live, because, well, things weren't working. The microscope ceased to function. Here is the click beetle. Now, he is doing what Jamie Patterson remembered yesterday as a wonderful word, and I've forgotten entirely what it is. But basically, snakes do it, a couple of mongoose species do it, and this thing's doing it now. And that is to pretend to be no longer alive. And he's doing that because he thinks we might ignore him and assume that he is one, that he's... Look, watch him. What he's doing, he thinks he's going to con us into believing that he's just a husk. Now watch. You see him bobbing around there? Watch those sharp things on the end of his abdomen, and we'll see if we can't make him stick them underneath the thorax and then click over. Isn't that cool? Anyway, those bits there, those sharp bits there, are the ones that are going to go underneath the abdomen there and click up. Right, on that note, let us head across to Jamie, find out if she's heard any sign of that buffalo that was bellowing earlier in the morning.
Oh, no sign of the buffalo, unfortunately. I went and sat for a little bit at Voyatella Dam just to see whether or not there were any sounds of lions feeding. I figure if one buffalo was perhaps unfortunate yesterday evening, that perhaps we'd be able to hear the sounds of feeding, particularly from the Nkahuma cubs, who of course are quite vociferously loud when they feed. It could also, of course, have been the two males that we saw yesterday. Yesterday evening at the end of our sunset safari, we finished off with the amazing sounds of two Birmingham boys roaring together. It was a stunning way to spend my first evening back in the bush. So it could have been them as well, I suppose. But I haven't heard any sounds of anything, and I haven't picked up any tracks either. So if they did kill something, it must have been on the northern side of the dam. And I'm just checking carefully along here as well, because Karula could so easily have popped out here. Tracking her is more of an art than a science. I definitely want to just make sure that she hasn't come past and decided to change her general direction. So that's our plan for the morning. Trundling. I think what we will do, because Taylor and Byron are... Taylor and Byron are out and about. I get it now. So James, I can't believe how ridiculously silly I was. Yesterday evening on our sort of work WhatsApp group, we were discussing who does what this morning, and James put down J and B on drive, J in tent, S on walk, and then tuberculosis tracking. I cannot believe I was so slow that I didn't figure it out that it was just T and B. TB. Anyway, Taylor and Byron are out tracking, so I'm not going to spend too much time around here, because then we have all three vehicles concentrated in this area. I think what Vim and I will do is we'll spread out and go to Cheetah Plains and see what we can find happening there. And we'll leave the tracking of stuff around Djuma to Brent, Byron and Taylor. But we'll see. Nothing ever goes according to plan, and there's a very good chance that Karula could just pop out. I'm saying that really hopefully in case she does. Karula could just pop out into the road in front of us. Yesterday, for those of you that missed our sunset safari, I have checked all of the hyena dens now. Between James and I, we've checked all of them. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as though our hyenas have come back to us, or if they have, they're in a different den site. But while we go searching for, well, anything actually, let's go back over to Brent, who's very specifically looking for the Queen.
Just get a quick loop around where Karula left Hasana and Chongile yesterday morning. No sign of them. That doesn't mean they're not here. They could be fast asleep in the bottom of a bush. I'll do one more loop around here. I think maybe we'll go up to the northern section, northwestern sections. Last tracks of Karula seem to be heading sort of more west than anywhere else across quarantine. We'll just do a quick check through here. Oh, it looks like the cloud might break up a bit as the morning goes on. Remember to use the hashtag #SafariLive if you'd like to get hold of us. It would be great to hear from you. Remember to let us know where you're watching from as well. The wonderful thing about the early mornings is that anticipation and trying to figure out what's been going on overnight. And of course all the birds as they get awaking. Not too cold, about 70 Fahrenheit. Quite pleasant. Enough to have a little chill in the air. Always a good spot to check for tracks around here. Some large game paths about, but alas, nothing just yet. Now it's quite possible little Hasana has moved within probably about a 500-meter radius of where James had him. So we're going to do a quick look back up towards Weaver's Nest and then head west from there. No lions roaring this morning either. A good morning, Tony. Tony's wondering what is the worst animal sound to wake up to. Ooh, that's a difficult one. Grey go-away birds are pretty bad. Actually, I think Brian might agree. It's on the odd morning that we get a morning off, and it is vervet monkeys jumping on your roof. Bam, 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 and you think the roof is collapsing on your head. And meanwhile, it's just the monkeys frolicking on the roof. That's probably the worst animal sound to wake up to here on Djuma. See, what a lot of people would consider a really terrible sound to wake up to is a sound we probably get quite excited about. Like the death bellows of a buffalo, the squealing of a warthog, the roar of a distressed hippo. It generally means that something's afoot and the predators are at play. Not a track in sight. Which is good. I suppose we need a little bit of a challenge for the morning, get the grey matter steaming away. So there's a good strong possibility that anywhere from about here, young Hasana could be hiding, terrorizing squirrels, terrorizing his sister. We have a tracking team out this morning as well, Taylor and Byron. So they're going to be giving us a hand. Hopefully they're having a bit more luck with the tracks. So while I check in with them on the radio, let's go back to the man in the tent.
Right, David, your millipede got in the way. I'm going to attempt the tadpole trick now. The first thing I need to do is change this. Look, David, you didn't see me do this, have you? Now we go like that, and we go OK, menu, and now the tadpole should appear here. Tadpole, where are you? There you are. There is the tadpole. Isn't that cool? See, now I've rendered him relatively immobile by putting him in a very small drop of water. Oh, his gills are going, his eyes are looking, his tail is not doing anything, and you can see the beginnings of his backbone there. Now this will become a frog via the process of metamorphosis, which of course is just a word that means a lot of change, or complete change. His legs will emerge from the back there next to his tail. The tail will disappear entirely. It won't fall off. It will be sort of reabsorbed back into the body. And the legs will come out the back. The little legs will come out the front. And eventually it will be a little frog. And we don't know. We think maybe a grass frog. Could be a rain frog. No, it couldn't be a rain frog because they're born. They don't go through metamorphosis, I don't think. Anyway, it was going to be fascinating to see over the next few weeks. We're just going to try and keep them alive. They eat algae, and they eat little bits of sort of water vegetation and rotting vegetation that sits at the bottom of ponds and pans. And so with any luck, what we'll be able to do is feed him and his friends, and as they get a bit bigger, we'll release more and more of them. And then eventually we'll have frogs. Yes. There we are. Huh. And Loves 3 Dog says this reminds you of your childhood tadpoles. Yes, I know what you mean. I have the same kind of feeling, I must say. Now, I think we've still got him in slightly too much water. We don't want him flicking around too much. And he will be released back into his pond shortly. Righty, I'll show you his pond if you want to look, everybody. Over here is his little pond. Sorry, David. Now, his pond is going to have to get substantially larger, of course, as we go towards the next 8 weeks. Now, Kathy, you said you thought you saw the future folded up back legs in the back of the tadpole yesterday when we looked at it through the microscope. I don't think they fold. I think they grow from buds. And I know exactly what you mean, because when it flicked over like that, we saw some rolled up stuff. I think that was the intestines, actually, of that little tadpole. And what they eat, if we look in here, this has been very carefully put together by Taylor. I don't think any of them are dead. No, they're not. They're all alive. Phew. They eat algae, and the algae almost has to come from the leaves that you find in the pan that they have been found. So if we look at those leaves, and I obviously can't pick them up, you can see that they are covered in little bits of green algae, and that's what these tadpoles are going to be eating. So we will have to replace this water from time to time over the next 6 weeks, and then we'll see what they become. I think it's really quite cool, don't you? Marvellous. Then I just wanted to show you that our click beetle has had been given his breakfast. He's still demonstrating his deadness. Sorry, David. And what they eat is pollen and nectar and flowers. So I'm hoping that he will happily sit there and just until tomorrow and eat that sort of thing during the course of the day. Just till tomorrow, my friend. That's all you have to do. And then I want a sterling performance. Okay? Good. that is the state of play with the tadpoles and the clickbeatly. You come back here. David's millipede keeps hiding. Now, what I wanted to find on the millipede, I know you've seen millipedes hundreds of times, everyone. Let me just quickly change this again. Okay. There are mites living on millipedes, and I don't know what kind of mites they are. Oh. And what that is the antenna of this millipede. How cool is that? But there are mites living in amongst the legs normally, and that's what I'm trying to find. There. There we go. Look at that thing. I'm pretty sure it is a parasite. Can you see it there, everyone? It's just below the legs on the segment, and it's very happily curled up there, and it thinks it's not being observed, when of course it is actually being observed. So that's what that is. I don't think it's dead in the slightest. And a mite is an arachnid. In other words, it is like a tick or a spider or a scorpion, and they're all actually, well, I mean, relatively closely related. As closely related, for example, as, what can I say, as closely related, they're an order. So they're as closely related as, well, as a dung beetle is to a jewel beetle. Here we go, he's now unraveling himself. That's very cool. There's a baby mite there as well. Now, if you want him to stay, all you do is tap him, and then he immediately assumes his defensive position. Look at that. Look, there's another tiny mite. I wonder if one of them isn't a tick. Can you see that? That really is quite astonishing. 8 legs, beastly little legs. No, Mr. Millipede. Look, he's covered in them. Now, I'm pretty sure these must be parasitic, unless they're used in some way for navigation, like the mites on a dung beetle. Hello, I walk in the rain. You say, can we get ticks as well? Do you mean for the microscope? Oh, I think we can get ticks on the millipede. I walk in the rain. I think that may well be a tick. It's leaving now. It's had quite enough of being here with us in the tent. There he goes. And I think we'll probably try and... Taylor picks these things up, and so does Stef. And every time I pick them up, they go to the loo on me. I am the bush laxative, of course. And it's foul smelling, so I'm really reticent to pick them up unless they're curled up like this. Let's just see if we can't get one more look at that. Would look to me like a tick. I walk in the rain. There it is. I'm pretty sure that that's a tick. It could be a mite. I'll do a little bit of research next time we're off air, and I'll try and find out if it is indeed a mite or a tick. And it's very cool. We will release this millipede. We might not. We might actually keep him because he's so infested with things. We might keep him for tomorrow. In the meantime, let us go and find out what... Just quickly turn on there. There is a crested barbet. Can you see it, David? Oh, well spotted. Look. Isn't he cute? They're probably my second favourite bird out here. They look so surprised by life. Right, somebody who's not going to look very surprised because she's always ultimately poised is Jamie Patterson, and let's go and find out what her poise is finding her this morning.
So far, so far the poise isn't working out terribly well for me, in that all is very, very quiet this morning. I'm listening to Brent and Taylor and Byron discussing their plans as they search Djuma. We're on the southern boundary of that lovely reserve, double checking to see whether or not the Queen hasn't crossed on our way to Cheetah Plains, but I think we'll go through Chitwa. That's what I think. Don't you think, Viam? Go and do some exploring. Find the first... Has anybody found a big cat on Chitwa yet? You need to find Shadow. On Tundi, yeah. I was going to say, Shadow might be a bit lost if she's... Shadow, yeah. Sisters, very similar. That's... What is that? I've been fooled by baboons again. I have been fooled by baboons again. Tisk. Tisk, tisk. Baboon tracks are exactly the size of leopard tracks. And these aren't very clear, unfortunately, so I think showing you is going to be a little bit tricky, especially given that I've parked in completely the wrong place. Sorry, Liam. That was entirely my fault. They're not very clear, though. Hence why I thought they were leopard tracks. Baboon tracks are exactly the same size, and their hands, the track that they leave with their hands, the toes, look very, very similar. So as you're scanning, it catches your attention, and then you end up triple checking every single baboon track. And one day, Liam and I were discussing it. It's probably happened more than once that there's been a leopard track in the middle of a troop of baboon tracks, and we've missed it completely. Right, yes, where were we? Tundi, yes. I would love to see Tundi and her cub. I've only seen that little cub twice. Once was sprinting away from baboons, and the other time was during one of our rehearsals, which was the first time I actually got to properly spend with Tundi's cub. So I'm looking forward to seeing him properly and getting to know him in the same way we know Hosanna and Shungile. Yes, let's go to Chitwa, find a big cat on Chitwa. Or anything. In this quiet, quiet morning. Everything's hiding away. And of course we've got the change of the bush. Everything is so much thicker and denser, which is wonderful. We're happy about it, but it's definitely making life a little bit more tricky in terms of spotting things. Especially leopards, especially a leopard cub, which is basically grass height. We'll all have to pay very close attention to what's going on around us. Nope, still baboon. Stop looking at the baboon tracks. Okay. Chitwa time. Let's just check this boundary quickly. It's quite a busy intersection. My plan is to go to Cheetah Plains, and that will bring us neatly to Nick's answer to the answer to Nick's question. Nick, you want to know if we ever see cheetah? We do. Mostly on Cheetah Plains, funnily enough. There is a vast open area there on the southeastern boundary that provides us, or has provided us, with some of the better cheetah sightings that we've had. We do occasionally see them on Djuma, but by occasionally I mean very, very occasionally. So yes, we do see cheetah almost invariably on Cheetah Plains, which is one of the reasons why I'm heading there now. I want to go and see whether or not they seem to walk a very regular path all the way up to Manuleti and then all the way back south into Mala, straight through Cheetah Plains. And I'm hoping that's what they've decided to do today. Now we do see cheetah. I've seen cheetah hunting wildebeest on that open area, not very successfully, but we do see them. One thing we haven't seen, well, I've certainly not in my time here, is a female cheetah. They're here, they must be. Brent says he found tracks once, but I have yet to see a female cheetah. Imagine seeing a female cheetah with cubs, how cool that would be. What time is it before I go barging into the front of the lodge? past. It's sort of just on the cusp where it might be considered to be rude if the guests are late for their morning drive. I just don't want to drive in front of the lodge while the guests are having their coffee. I don't think they'd be terribly impressed with that. Now while I do a loop around Chitwa Dam to see what we can see, we've got different perspectives out here, and I'm sure James is very keen to let you know what Ronald's up to this morning.
Right, we're here trying to drive Ronald the Rover round to the pan. Let's take a look at his view immediately. There he is. Now Ronald is having a little bit of trouble. There he goes. He was placed by Connor Teagues a marathon distance from where he wanted to be. So now he's travelling unaccompanied through the wilderness and trying desperately to make it on time. But of course the summer vegetation's not making it easy for the fellow, is it? Now there are the white gomphrenias. I think that's what those plants are there. No, he's not stuck. Here we go. We'll just keep going over some guinea grass. Come on, Ronald. Be strong. Be brave. See how clever he is. He got over that stick. Another bit of Egrets there. It's quite cool. Now, his picture is not great because there's not a lot of light at the moment. And as the light starts to come up, so he will start to give you a more high-definition look of the mongoose eye view that he's... Oh, hang on a second. There's some nice flowers there, Ronald. Let's have a look at those, shall we? I think you may have killed them, Ronald. I think you drove straight over them, and they're all now lying flat on the ground. You need to stop sooner. He's also got a little bit of a delay in his controls, which means that you kind of have to guess where he's going. No, there we go. Okay, forward we go. We're going to go and park him next to the pan, because next to the pan seems to be the place where he's had the most action, and down by the dam side of things, it's just a little bit more difficult because the vegetation is that much thicker, and the mud is that much thicker as well. Oh, look at him going through this forest. Isn't he brave? He's such a brave fellow, is our Ronald. Now, I think all those little white things there are called gomphrena, something similar to that, and it's been frustrating me because I used to know, and I've been trying to find some kind of reference to it, but I'm failing. Anyway, I will check that up again as well. Now, apparently we're going to have a drone shot. I just don't know where the drone is. Oh, there it is. Wonderful. This is amazing. There is Ronald, tirelessly soldiering across that field of gomphrena. Look at him go. Isn't that wonderful? And there's the drone in the middle of the rover shot. There we go. There is Marvin, the matrice. The drone commander hates it when I call his drone Marvin. He thinks it's not a very manly term for his drone, but I don't really care. I think Marvin's a wonderful name. Right, we're going to just watch the drone now. Oh, this is a great shot, especially the movement in it. That's a thing for us to remember. Now, we'll just try and position Ronald quite carefully. We have to let go. We have to let go of the controls every so often, because when you get to this delicate stage here, what you don't want to do is overdrive him, because he will then end up in the water, and Alex Voss will, well, have me arrested by the KGB, which doesn't exist anymore. Right, yeah, just a little bit further up onto the top there. Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to park. We'll wait for the Hardy-Dars to arrive there on those logs, and maybe something will come down and drink, perhaps some elephants, and I was really hoping yesterday for some wild dogs. That would have been very special indeed. So we'll leave Ronald there. Can we have one more look at the drone view, because I just think that's too lovely. There he is. And hopefully those Hardy-Dars love to sit on that log, which I suspect has been strategically placed there. I'm not sure that that is a natural placement. Anyway, there it is. Oh, wow. You can see the sun not quite come out yet. I think that this cloud will burn off. It looks like a pretty nice day starting to form. And lovely colours there. All that algae, of course, the tadpoles will love to drink and eat. They don't drink algae, do they, David? They eat it. They chew it. Beautiful stuff. You can see, I mean, even since we started using the drone, how much greener it's got. And also how those bare patches of earth are starting now to be covered in grass. Oh, David, look. It's stopping. It's trying to escape. That's the click beetle. It doesn't want to be on TV, and it keeps folding its antenna in. Right, Jamie has got something slightly more, well, shall we say, conventionally exciting than a click beetle. Let's go and have a look.
I think click beetles are very exciting, but then of course so are elephants. And we've got this elephant bull that is doing a marvellous job of hiding behind the silver cluster leaves here at Chitwa Dam. I think we're going to have to go forward a little bit just to see a better view of his face, and then you can have a look at his left tusk, which is interesting, and we'll discuss a little bit about the way in which an elephant tusk works when we have a better chance to see him. I don't think that was a very pleasant injury. Hello, boy. Here we go. Hello, mister. That can't have been very pleasant at all. So he's broken off his left tusk right at the base. And that was probably very, very uncomfortable, and it probably gave him a serious headache because, of course, the tusk is a modified tooth, and it sits with an incredibly deep root system that goes right up into the elephant's face, essentially. Now, a break around the tip of the tusk isn't too serious. That doesn't really hurt them. But a break in that sort of area is painful indeed. And I'm sure it was probably enough to put him in a seriously grumpy mood whenever he happened to do that. And often you hear stories of upset elephant bulls or grumpy elephants, and many times the explanation behind their behavior is actually that they've got toothache. Those of you who've had problems with your teeth before, perhaps you've had an abscess, you'll know how all-encompassing that pain can be. Now imagine being an elephant with the weight of the tusk as well. See him flapping his ears, helping to cool himself down. I think the flies are bugging him as well. You can see the twitches in his skin. So his right tusk is perfectly intact. His left tusk is broken off entirely. And sometimes that you will sometimes get an elephant that has a crack in its tusk, or just a sort of congenital defect that they're born with, so when the tooth grows it's already cracked. And that can be an explanation for a break. He could also have broken it off in a fight with another male. And he's musty. I've just got a whiff of the scent that's blowing off him. Seems as though quite a few of our elephants are actually in must. Elephant bulls are in must. So he's secreting from his temporal gland, which is of course conveniently hidden behind the leaves of that bush, but he is secreting from his temporal gland, and he is exuding an interesting scent. Our MSS Sky, while we're talking about his broken tusk, and I think we should try and reposition again so that we can actually see it while we talk about it. You want to know whether or not his tusk will grow back, or if elephants' tusks grow back. If it's broken at the tip, yes, because elephants' tusks grow throughout their lives, so they're constantly laying down the ivory in order to lengthen the tusk. So if it's broken at the tip, then it will grow back. But an injury like this most definitely will not, because it's damaged close to the root. Hey, mister. Because it's damaged near the root, I don't think that's going to heal at all. You can see it's cracked in the middle as well, so there's just a tiny shard that's left sticking out. So my guess would be no, this wouldn't heal at all. Unlike our antelope, that once their horns are fully grown, and horns of course are bone, if an antelope breaks its horn, that's it, that's the end. It won't ever grow back once their horns are fully grown. And even if they break it when they're young, the damage done will probably result in some kind of deformity. Elephant tusks continue to grow. Rhino horns continue to grow as well. Rhino horn is essentially, rather than being teeth, it's essentially the same stuff as your hair or your fingernails. It's made of keratin. I mean, that's a slight oversimplification, but essentially that's what it is. So rhino horn grows continuously. Elephant tusks grow continuously. And you'll find that elephant bulls, they go through a stage around 30 or so years old where all of a sudden the rate of the growth of their tusks increases exponentially. Now that's why you hear of the big tuskers, they're always over the age of about 30. And it'll differ from elephant to elephant. So just like with human beings, some are taller, some are shorter. The same applies for elephants. Their tusks, some will be born with big tusks, some with small tusks. Hello, Smelly. He smells like, it was you, Viam, who described the smell of elephant must. Oros. Yes, sour oros. Now, oros is a juice concentrate that every single South African school child was given, although I assume now these days they get fresh fruit juice, but back in our day, that was what we drank. While we watch our Ellie, who seems to be absolutely fine, apart from the fact that he's in must, he's absolutely healthy. There's no sign of any swelling. However, Linda, you wanted to know if there was a sign of a noticeable infection, would a vet treat it? The answer is probably not, in that it falls under the policy of minimal intervention. So if it is a naturally induced injury, then a vet won't step in to try and help the animal. If it's anthropogenic in nature, in other words, if it's caused by human beings, like a snare or something like that around the elephant's trunk or its feet, then absolutely we would step in. But when it's a natural cause, generally we don't. However, it's complicated slightly by the fact that an elephant with an infected tusk is quite a dangerous elephant. They can be very, very unpleasant and quite unpredictable and quite aggressive. And there might be cause for treating the elephant in order to make sure that people on the reserve are kept safe. On this beautiful, beautiful morning, and it really is exquisite, I think it's time to have a look at the view from the air.
Check this out. We're going to go straight up to the sky. Look! Those are egrets. From the sky. Well done, Connor. That's a beautiful shot. Where they're going, I don't know, because, you know, we seldom see them flying over this reserve. They're probably heading down towards the Sand River, I guess, or maybe the Sabi River. How wonderful is that? Wow. I wonder where they're going. That depression you can see sort of middle of your screen, sort of cutting a swathe through the middle of the screen there, is the Luamati drainage. That's Twin Dams Road, I think. And there they go, following the line of the tributary. And probably they're going to end up on the Sand River, where there are permanent ponds and things that hold the frogs that they'll want to eat. Look at them now forming their V formation. Now, they're not very high up. I mean, they're probably only sort of a few meters over the treetops there. And Connor, of course, is much higher up than that. Yeah, that's Chelapan now. They're flying over Chelapan and down just to where, I mean, that's where Karula was eating the other day, just to the right-hand side of your picture. And way in the distance there, you might just be able to see the valley of the Great Sand River. How wonderful was that? All right, we were setting something up outside here. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to look at it or if we're going to go back to the elephant. But let's just have a look. What we've got going here is, well, it's a sort of I'll confess to you that this tree is not actually growing here. I stuck it in here because I wanted to keep our caterpillars alive. And there is one of them there. It's got a very rough surface. And that is the caterpillar of the African migrant. And what I desperately want to do is to get it on the screen eating one of these senna leaves. Because if you've ever watched a caterpillar eating leaves on the screen at high sort of magnification, it is really quite astounding to watch their little mouth parts work. That chap still seems to be asleep from the excesses of Saturday night. I suppose it was Saturday last night, wasn't it, David? That caterpillar must be slightly tired. So we're going to wait for him to wake up. In other words, we're going to wait for it to heat up a bit, and then we'll stick him under the microscope and see if we can't see him eating away at some of the leaves. Marvellous. Right, let's head it back. Oh, no, we're not going back anywhere. Stefan Winterboer has managed to find himself a cup of coffee. He's tied his laces, and he's now on foot.
I have tied my laces, thank you very much, James. Although, I must be honest with you, I've got so much carrot seed stuck in my socks that even washing them repeatedly is not getting the seeds out anymore, and they're doing a very fine job of trying to saw my feet off. But that's beside the point. I'm very happy to be on Bushwalk this morning. It's once again overcast and getting gradually more so as we are entering this phase of today's safari. And for those of you who have just joined us or are new to to this whole safari experience. Well, my name is Stef and yes, we are on foot walking around in the Kruger National Park here at Djuma Private Game Reserve, the same place that Brent and Jamie are driving around in. What we're going to do today is a good question. Generally, these bushwalks are designed to sort of unfold the bush story for you and to give you a little bit of a deeper understanding as to where the characters that Brent and Jamie will be showing you, where they live and how they live and on what they live. And that's one of the benefits of being out on foot, is that it's a little bit more detail focused. Now today, because we have got a TV show coming up tomorrow, some of you may know that at I think at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, well, for us it will be Monday morning, for you in the US it will be on Sunday evening. We've got a TV show, and we need to get on top of animal movements from yesterday already. So from yesterday we've been keeping tabs on all the animals, our animal characters, our leopard and our lion characters, and we have Karula. We had Karula last night at 9:30 right outside where Brent and Jamie live here. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, is I'm going to be moving through this area. We have Herbie, of course, which is a very gifted tracker, and we're going to be looking for signs of Karula and those two cubs to see if she's still on this particular property, and keeping tabs on her the whole day. We're also going to be listening to the bush and trying to understand if there's any other male lions or any leopard on foot, or actually around here. Hopefully we're hearing some disturbance. Now Mary, you've just asked me what other animals are we likely to encounter on foot. You know, it's funny, I just want to show you the bush here. This 3 months ago, Mary, was sand. There was not a blade of grass on this particular open area, not a single blade. Now it's a sea of green. Equally, 3 months ago, we could not walk anywhere without bumping into a buffalo, bumping into an elephant. The amount of animals around here was just massive. What's happened now is with the rains and the flush of vegetation, these animals have dispersed. And now it's actually quite uncommon to bump into something here at Djuma, to be honest with you. Everything is so dispersed. You stand a much greater chance of missing something by even a couple of yards because of this green flush that we don't actually see much here, which in itself is a danger. Walking around out here requires a certain amount of skill, and it also requires a certain amount of caution, because in summertime you can get so complacent. You can get stuck looking at the insect and looking down and not extending your senses into the bush, and running the risk of bumping into that buffalo, bumping into that elephant herd, which is not moving, which is just standing feeding in a smaller place. So what do I expect? I still expect the same animals that we expect in, say, October. I still expect to bump into leopard and buffalo and lion, rhinoceros and elephant all the time. It's just that we don't, which is the danger. So I expect to do that. We don't normally bump into that sort of stuff in summertime, and we will start to do it again in probably about May, is when everything starts to constrict around these watering holes. But the most dangerous thing that we walk into now is snakes, and these guys. Now these guys have finally gotten to their adult size. This is about as big as they get. This is an elegant grasshopper. We show them to you very often. A beautifully colored grasshopper. And I say dangerous, the most dangerous thing, because if I had to pop that into my mouth and chew it, I could kill myself. They have been known to kill dogs that accidentally chew on them. And you can just see that although very colorful, that is not something that shouts, "Please eat me." Actual fact, it's so convinced of its own immortality that it doesn't even have wings to fly away with. It just has these very rudimentary wings. That's about as long as their wings get. And it drags around its body out here, completely safe in the knowledge that its colors will tell every predator, "Do not touch me," and it can carry on with its day. So that's in snakes. We're seeing a lot of snakes around at the moment. During the daytime in summertime, snakes, things like puff adders, black mambas and cobras. are probably the most dangerous things that we could walk into here from a snake point of view during the day. At night time, puff adder, Mozambican spitting cobra. What else have we got at night time? Stiletto snakes, which are tiny little, very dark snakes, are the most common snakes. Probably night adder. I'm trying to rack my brain now to think of. Excuse me, something was rustling at my feet and talking about snakes. I'm making myself nervous. So those are about the most common dangerous snakes, and then of course scorpions as well. Lots and lots of scorpions at night time here. And that's about that really for now. We've got the wind blowing out of the south again, which is quite nice. I have noticed this year, above all other years, we have the wind blowing out of the south. As soon as it puffs out of the south, we start to get clouds, almost, within a 24-hour period. This is a bit of blackjack. You can see the barbed, almost harpooned, what did you call that? Fishing spear-like hook at the end of this seed. Very distinctive weed that is common throughout South Africa, especially on disturbed areas. The reason why this blackjack is growing here is because of the high traffic across these quarantine clearings. It is a plant that enjoys a high traffic area and will outcompete other plants in an area with high traffic. We call plants like this pioneers. I picked them because their leaves have a very peppery, I'm trying to think of a taste that's similar to blackjack. Probably rocket, a type of wild rocket. So quite a peppery, salty. I quite like it. It's quite a nice leaf. Of course, you can reduce the overpowering flavor of these things by cooking them, and they are collected and cooked as a vegetable. They have quite a high protein content, around about, I'm actually going to lie if I tell you, but plants generally with a high protein content have anything between 10% and 25% protein content, and this is one of those. Just makes for a nice breakfast. I haven't eaten anything yet this morning, and so I have a story to tell you though. James, you asked me a question about have we seen a rise in certain plant species or an abundance of certain plant species this year? James, I'd like to say yes. Every single year that I've been in the bush, now approaching 18 years, I've seen a different insect and a different plant every single year sort of take precedence over another. So while all plant species here are represented, they're not represented evenly. They go through these dips and troughs where certain years are more beneficial to some plants than others. And so you'll start seeing more of one particular plant than you will of another. This particular year is difficult to say, to be quite honest with you. I haven't noticed something different to last year. Mainly because last year there was no grass, and so I have a 1-year gap in my grass and plant knowledge, and that is substantial. Knowledge comes in and out of my head. Personally, it flows in one ear and goes out the other ear, and every year I have to sort of relearn everything again, and in particular with plants. So I haven't really noticed any particular plant having dominance over any other, but to be quite honest with you, James, something could, and I just haven't noticed it just yet. It's just something I haven't really taken notice of just yet. All right, now I'm going to finish my last little bit of blackjack, and James has got an interesting bird to show you at the tent.
You've got two interesting things going on here. There are starlings there, Cape Glossy Starlings, and they've got a nest site on this dead tree just outside the back of the tent. There you can see where we are. There, that's the nest site there. You can see it sticking its head in there. But the starling that you first saw was pulling big branches, very substantially sized branches. In fact, there is one of those branches there, Dave, on that bough where I normally sit. There, he pulled that out of the hole to the left. Why he pulled that out of the hole to the left, who put it in there? I assume he put it in there. I don't know why he would have done that. Anyway, it would be lovely to see little ones growing and perhaps coming out of that nest during the course of the next few weeks. But also, I have just heard the sound of what you saw, the eyes there looking at you over there. These eyes here of the baboon. Look, it's going into the nest. There's a troop of baboons around here somewhere. I've just heard that going, bow, bow. So what I'm going to suggest that David and I do is just take a little walkie outside and see if we can't see them. I suspect they're going towards the marula tree, full of marulas over that away. Somewhere here. Let's just have a listen. This is how I listen, everyone. Oh, I can't see them. There, I can hear them now. They're behind us. I saw movement in that tree. I wonder if they aren't actually already in the marula tree. There is some impala, Dave. How much cable you got? You got just down through there, and I suspect those baboons are walking with the impala. Anyway, as we came to the tent this morning, we saw some lights. It was obviously completely dark, so we shone the torch and we saw these two eyes, and it turned out to be the eyes of a nyala, but we hoped quite fervently that they were the eyes of Karula, because that will be the ultimate sighting from the tent. Karula, Hosana and Shungile walking past, or perhaps eating their meal just outside the tent. I think that would be a wonderful thing to see here from our little bush office. Anyway, we'll figure out what's going on there. In the meantime, I have another caterpillar setup for you. And this really is a setup, because I'm trying to keep these things alive, you see, for television. And if you come over here, you can see the caterpillar of the African monarch. And we're just feeding it here. And it's not eating, and many of you will know this because we've seen these things on Bushwalk, it's not eating the milkweed. They're eating another plant that's filled with white milky latex, and this white milky latex is almost certainly extremely toxic, and that is what is going to make that monarch butterfly as toxic, probably even more so than that grasshopper you were looking at with Stef. And you can see the coloration actually very, very similar there. Just looks like a caterpillar version of exactly the same animal. So that's quite cool there. Just remember, hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarth.tv. You can talk to us at any stage. Just like Chris has. Thank you, Chris. You're wondering about why it is that the baboons will walk with the impala. It is purely because of security. You might find actually that the impala do a little bit of walking with the baboons as well, because the baboons will drop stuff out of the trees, fruits that the impala will quite like to eat, but it's largely for security. The baboons obviously up in the tops of the trees every so often, so their ability to see things that are coming to eat them that much greater than the impalas, because they're up top. And then the impala, of course, just extremely vigilant, great ears, great eyes, and they're scanning all the time. And so they mutually warn each other of what is coming to eat them. Now, let's head straight across to Brent and find out what his update is on tracking the Queen. He hasn't found the Queen yet, obviously. Now, there was something I wanted to say to you, actually, and that's quite interesting. Now, I'm just trying to think if I shouldn't try and draw this for you. Let me try and draw it for you. Wait here, Davey. I'll just bring some paper out. We had some chat and some talk the other day about eye shape, and I had forgotten all about it, and so I went back and actually, for once in my life, did the research that I was supposed to, and I found out about the eye shape that things have. And I wonder if the fact that baboons and let me find one that we're unlikely to use tomorrow. Here we go. The fact that baboons and impala live together, or often live together, I think might have something to do with the fact that they have different shaped eyes, which means that they see things in different ways. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to draw on the map itself, I'm just going to flick it around like that, and we'll draw on the back of the map. What we have, remember there are probably 3 different kinds of eyes. So if we got, let's draw some eyes here. 2, 3. Right, now many of you have a garden variety cat, and many of you the other day sent through pictures of your cats, because I said to you, if your cat has got similar animal, has got animal characteristics that you recognize in the wild animals out here, tell us about it. Well, there was a flood of stuff, so thank you very much for that. So we're going to put, what should we call our cat? What's a common cat name, David?
Fluffy.
Fluffy. Fluffy the cat. There we. Now, Fluffy the cat has got a pupil that looks like that. It's horizontal, and it's split like that. That's what Fluffy's eye looks like. See that? That's a wonderful eye, David. Then we have, let's call it Fido, the dog. And I'm pretty sure that Fido's is round, like that. That's the pupil. And I'll tell you the difference between them two. That could be Fido the dog or Leo the lion, either of them, or indeed Karula the leopard. And then the most interesting to me is this shape. And this shape is what we have on those impala, on horses, on cows, on just about anything that grazes. Now, just in brief, a cat like this, like Fluffy, is an ambush predator. African wildcat could also be a serval or a caracal. Ambush predator, very low to the ground. And something about their being low to the ground and not having to chase, they pounce, basically, they're pouncers, means that that pupil shape gives them a much more accurate representation of how far away the prey actually is. Then if you come to Fido, Leo, or Karula, they do a bit of stalking and ambushing, but they also do some chasing. And I think apparently that's why they have a shape of pupil like that. The most interesting one is this. This is the impala or the horse. And what they do, let me just write that down. That eye shifts in the head. So when the impala is looking up, the pupil is parallel with the horizon, and that apparently gives it a very wide field of view. As it turns its head down towards the ground, what happens is that the eye actually shifts in its socket. And a bit like a spirit level, or the bubble in a spirit level, it self-corrects. And so when the head is down, the eye is still horizontal to the horizon, which means it maintains that astounding field of view, sort of almost 270 degrees, which I think is very cool. Now, we're not going to go to Impala, we're not going to go to Fluffy the cat, but we are going to go not to Fido the dog, not Karula the leopard, but Leo the lion.
So from drawings of lion's eyes to actual lion's eyes, albeit somewhat sleepy ones, look at this lovely surprise that Cheetah Plains has had to offer us. 1 slumbering lioness and 2 gorgeous suckling cubs. So we're sitting with one of the Styx females. Now for those of you that are new to these live safaris, this is probably the lion pride that we see second most often, if that makes any sense, in terms of which lions we get to interact with and which lions we see. Their territory borders that of the famous Nkuhuma pride, and at the moment, of course, they have these 2 little bundles of joy who are currently suckling away, and were a little bit earlier suckling particularly noisily, arguing and scrapping over who got access to which nipple. They seem to have settled down now. You can see Mom is snoozing away with a relatively contented look on her face. I'm not sure where her other 2 pride members are. There are 3 females in the Styx pride. And there were, at one point, 8 cubs. All 8 of them, unfortunately, didn't make it. They were got struck down by a really terrible case of mange, and then these two little ones came along, and unfortunately it does look as though they're struggling in the same way. We've seen mange spread throughout our cats like wildfire, or throughout the lions like wildfire. It started with the Styx and then moved from the Styx to the Nkuhumas, probably via the Birmingham boys, just because they are the common denominator, although we will never know for absolute certain. It seems as though the Nkuhumas, in complete contrast to the Styx, they seem to be okay. They seem to be recovering nicely. And hopefully with all of the rain that we've had, it will help these two recover as well, and hopefully they will manage to survive where their siblings and cousins did not. It is a difficult one, and obviously it's something where it tugs at the heartstrings to see the poor little things all scabby as they are. You can see it all along the outside of their ears as well, and the tips of their tails and their elbows. They definitely don't look nearly as bad as the Styx cubs before them. There was a stage when those poor little Styx cubs before they died looked absolutely terrible. They were basically bald. But luckily these little ones are okay. Now it's a difficult one, and I'm sure many of you are questioning, those of you that are new to these live safaris, questioning why it is that we don't intervene and treat them. And it is a policy of non-intervention, as we discussed with the elephant, and the fact that elephants with infected tusks might not get treated. But unless it is caused by human beings, which this has not been, this was a direct result of the extreme drought that we experienced. Oh, look, you can see that little thing suckling. It's so cute. Unfortunately, it does mean that we don't intervene in situations like this. We allow Mother Nature to take her course, as she has done, and you can get a really good idea, because we've seen it now with both the Styx and the Nkuhuma cubs. You can have a really good idea about the kind of benefits that it can have for the genetic population as a whole, because the Styx obviously haven't recovered as well as the Nkuhumas, and you can see she's also got touches of mange still around her face and around her chest. And it just goes to show that certain lion prides have a certain genetic strength or resilience against something like mange. So the fact that the Styx cubs died of mange, but the Nkuhumas haven't, means that in future the genetics of the lions of this area will pass on the strongest possible resistance to something like mange in the future. But I'm really rooting for these two little ones. I really hope they make it. I'm hoping that with all of the rain that we've had, the food quality will be better. They'll just be that little bit healthier. And apparently, High Moon, you say that you think that the Styx look a little better than the last time you saw them. And certainly the Styx have always been sort of, compared to the Nkuhumas, the Styx have always been sort of a bit raggedy, a bit rough around the edges, but I happen to agree with you. I certainly think she looks better. The adult female looks better. I can't comment on the cubs because I haven't seen them in a considerable period of time. But I think you're right. I think that the adults look a lot better. Sorry, just waving hello to Ephraim. Yes, girl. We're talking about you. You beautiful thing. You definitely look better. Not nearly as scruffy. I haven't seen the older two lionesses either, but I think perhaps James can comment as well, because I know he's seen them in the not too distant past. Oh, look. Breakfast. You can see the little suckling movement. Michael, you say it might be you, but that you... Hop, skip, jump. You're going, little girl. Michael, sorry. Where's it going? Where are you going, little adventurer? This actually does bring us sort of to Michael's question, as it goes off on its own little adventure down into the drainage line. Michael, you say that it seems as though, to you, this lioness has spent more time away from the rest of the pride, and wouldn't these cubs be strong enough now to travel with the pride? It's a good point. I've also wondered about that. I'm not quite sure. Where are you going? Sorry, distracted now by this little cub. The other one's curious now as well. The other one wants to go on an adventure with its sibling. There he goes. Oh, they are big enough and they are strong enough to start traveling with the rest of the pride. Although, bear in mind that with the Nkuhumas, It's only when they were about 4 or 5 months old that we really saw them stay with the rest of the pride. The pride would keep them quite close, but they'd often leave them in a drainage line or somewhere around there, and we'd so frequently... Where are you going? We'd so frequently find the cubs on their own somewhere. I think it's more just the fact that I don't think there's a vast difference between this mother and the way that the Nkuhumas have raised their cubs. And perhaps the fact that there aren't any siblings with them means she's kept them away. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure whether or not we can draw a conclusion just yet. Oh, shame. Itchy elbow. Definitely looking very scruffy. It was such a pity because when we first started seeing them, they were such perfect little teddy bear cubs. I was so hopeful that they were going to escape it, but of course mange is so contagious that there's no way they could have, with the adults infected. While our lion snoozes away happily and her cubs go off on crazy adventures, I think it's time to head across to Stef, who's found something very interesting to show you.
So what you're having a look at over here is a type of symbiosis that is very often talked about by guides and also shown in books, but quite infrequently seen. And the reason is it's because it's very seasonal, and we are lucky enough to be able to show this with you. That mat of grass that you have in the background over there is the nest of a blue waxbill. The very untidy grass ball nest, which is a cavity nest. The entrance is behind the stick to the right of the nest, and in front of it there is its gatekeeper. That is a wasp nest, and the blue waxbills and the wasps protect one another. Obviously the blue waxbills don't eat the wasps, but do provide a harassment element to other insects and other predators on the wasps. The wasps themselves protect the blue waxbill's nest from anything large that wants to come and eat them by stinging them, obviously. What you're looking at here is the colony. That is a paper wasp. They chew up wood and plant material and make a type of paper mache. They then build cavities, and inside those cavities they lay their eggs. The pupae of the wasp are carnivorous, and the wasps will, as the day gets a bit warmer, they will then forage for insects to bring back to their pupae. These wasps that you're looking at now, they were born out of those empty cavities that you can see. Isn't that just the most amazing thing? There's the empty cavities. All the wasps you're looking at now came out of those cavities, and as you go further down they'll be tending their larvae that is inside the cavities, feeding them with caterpillars. Wasps themselves in their adult form are vegetarians. They eat pollen and nectar and plant material. Then they do harvest living things though, and form quite a beneficial pest controlling unit. But there you go, that lovely double shot of a blue waxbill's nest, and it's, as far as we know, it is probably, which symbiosis? It's actually a topic of discussion. I see it as a type of commensalism where both species benefit from the partnership or the relationship with one another. Some do view it as a type of mutualism, which is where only one party benefits but the other party neither benefits nor is harmed by the relationship or by the partnership. I don't know, I suppose I could pitch it at you and you can decide. Why don't we have a discussion and we see, how many answers come into our final control about what you think it is. So you hardly ever find these two types of species apart from one another when they're nesting. It's the blue waxbill and this particular species of wasp. The wasps will build their nests at the entrance to the blue waxbill nest. They do not sting the blue waxbill, not that I've seen at least anyway. And the blue waxbill doesn't eat the wasps. The blue waxbills are seed eaters, so they don't eat the wasps, but they each benefit one another. In my opinion, in your opinion, perhaps the wasps are the ones helping the blue waxbills stay protected from things like snakes and other avian predators. And you can see, so commensalism is where both parties benefit from the relationship. Mutualism is where one party benefits and the other party is neither harmed but nor benefits. And send your answers to the hashtag Safari Live or questions at WildEarthTV as an email address, and let's see what you think. It's always been a fun game. These wasps are aggressively defensive of their particular nest, and quite often games are played on children in this area where you will try and see if you can get your friend stung, how alert he is to the bush, in other words. So you'd be able to see what your friend's bush awareness or situational awareness is by pointing at something on the ground and letting them walk into the tree and then run through the bush with their accompanying wasps stinging them off into the distance. Apparently quite funny. I wouldn't find it quite funny. I'd have to be airlifted out of here if those things stung me. But isn't that just such a nice thing to see? I quite enjoy that. Nice to see. Alright, let's carry on with I actually wanted to show you something that I did find on this tree. Come with me around this edge here. Here we have a bunch of termites, or I had a bunch of termites. There are still some here, one or two. Normally these termites cover, they're retreating now to their hole. They're being called back. So you can see on the edge of this branch that this tree's woody covering is being eaten off, and it's been eaten off by, there's a termite there. It's been eaten off by a specific termite that doesn't have a mound. This particular type of termite lives in the ground, in galleries under the ground, and does move up trees. Usually what happens though is they cover themselves in a mud casing, and these mud casings can go all the way up these trees. They will come and harvest bits and pieces of bark from the trees. They also harvest grass and everything around it, but in this particular case just bits and pieces of bark, and they will leave these tubes and castes of sand going all the way up the trees into quite high up in the tree canopy itself. And quite interestingly, in cold areas, they will orientate themselves to where the sun is the most, and so you can use it as a sort of rudimentary way of finding direction. Obviously very difficult to do in an area that has changing shade patterns, but when it's a bit more open, they will tend to have their galleries or their harvesting tubes on the northern face of trees and on shrubs in the southern hemisphere. Very similar to how you've seen me point out mongoose latrines on the northern side of termite mounds as well. It's just because it's the most sunny place and gets warm early in the morning, and obviously helps them with their metabolism. And there's just, everywhere I look, there's these excavation holes of these termites. They've all disappeared now because we're standing here now, and so they've tapped their heads on the floor, and that sends a vibration through the sand, and they all retreat, cover up their hole, and probably for the rest of the day they won't be coming out again until tonight. Alright, on that note, why don't we send you over to James in his tent? I think he's got something to show you. I didn't quite catch what it was.
I do have something to show you. It's just behind my head. There it is. A bushbuck. Beautiful bushbuck ram, and he's not alone, he's got a friend, but we'll show the friend to you just now. Oh, and an oxpecker. That's very exciting. Isn't that cool? Now he's watching us quite carefully with those horizontally orientated pupils. David, did you notice how I used the word orientate as opposed to orient? Yes, that's because Orient is a place in the Far East. Orientate means orientate. Now that bushbuck, we've been watching the Styx Pride, of course, and they have got a bit of mange. That Bushbuck has definitely suffered from mange as well. You see that on his neck there, but he'll be surviving it. It's not uncommon, especially in these tragolaphids, so the Bushbuck and the Nyala and the kudu. But I'm sure he's fine now, especially, of course, now that the vegetation is green and lovely. Isn't that a beautiful shot? We don't get to see Bushbuck like this, and it's only because he's kind of slightly unsighted, I suppose, because of us in the tent. He can hear us talking, probably smell a bit of human, but he's used to the human smell. Oh, look at the oxpecker scratching the mange and how he put his head down like that. I'm sure he was enjoying the bit of a scratch there. But because we're not standing outside the tent, I think he is not quite working out that we are humans here. He can hear us, obviously. Now, Dave, the other one is just out there. There he goes. I don't know why it feels so... I suppose because it becomes common when we're out in the field, in the vehicles. It doesn't feel quite as amazing as this when you see something like a bushbuck. But being in the tent and having the animals walk by, I don't know, it feels really special. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's a mongoose, a bushbuck, a baboon, a nyala. Obviously, the ultimate would be to have Karula or a wild dog sitting just outside here, or a hyena. We had a hyena the other day, but we weren't live. Isn't that gorgeous? That fence in the background, I know you can see that, and you're probably wondering what it is. That was the general manager's house. Ah, the bushbuck is eating oleander flowers. Isn't that delicious? VR Viking, you say you reckon there are more animals coming to the tent of late. Yes, I suppose there probably are. I think they're getting used to it, and they no longer see it as any kind of a threat. Darby, we have to go outside and look at this other one because it's now standing in amongst the Chlorus roxburgiana. I think you're going to get your best view straight through there. I'll go and see if there's a better one around here. Yeah, this is quite cool, this side, if you would like to move. Otherwise, if you've got a good shot. Yeah. There we go. Now, you saw the first bushbuck there eating oleander. That is a flower, which I shall show you shortly. But they, quite interestingly, have a nicely separated niche, trophic niche. That's 2 niches, that's 3, from the Nyala and the Kudu. And where these guys eat very low down, you saw them eating those forbs, the oleanders, it tends to be largely separated by height. Now, obviously, there's a huge amount of overlap. But it does mean that they're not always competing with each other. That was a very interesting flash of the white tail there. Did it go to the loo, David?
I didn't see there was good, no.
That's very interesting. I wonder what that means. Perhaps flashing at the other one. He was running around the other side there. So they, although they exist with the Nyala and the Kudu, there seems to be virtually no overlap, or virtually no competition. There's overlap of the food niche, but there isn't a huge amount of direct competition. And Terry, you're saying, is this bushbuck fully grown? It is absolutely fully grown. It's the same size pretty much as an impala ram. Just a little bit shorter, maybe, but stockier. And the horns are slightly shorter. So at the top of the withers there, or the shoulder, it probably stands about 3.5 feet. Maybe 3 feet. But the mass is about similar to that of an impala, so about 70 degrees, 70 kilograms, or 160 pounds or so. Wonderful question from Kyle saying, what 3 antelope do I think are the most comfortable around the tent? Well, definitely the Bushbuck and the Nyala. The only other antelope we've seen, Kyle, around the tent has been Impala. I haven't seen Kudu here. Kudu tend to be a lot more skittish. But because these Bushbuck and Nyala spend time around the camp, they just tend to get used to people quite more quickly. And I think, why do they spend time around the camp? Probably because there's a lot of water around the camp, and therefore there's a lot of thicker vegetation, so that's probably why they spend time there. And then I think they work out quite quickly that the predators are slightly more reticent to come towards and into the camps than they would be, plainly out in the bush. So I think they get used to that, and I think they figure that out. And then I think the Impala, because the pans that we pump are quite close to camp, spend a huge amount of time around here. We drive past them all the time, and they've got a lot more used to us. Impala won't stand like that, though. That is fantastic. Bushbuck and Kudu, at least in Nyala, by far more confiding than any of the other antelope that we have here. That was really very special indeed. Good stuff. Now, I believe we are going to go and find out from Bushwalk whether or not Stefan has got something that he can eat or can't eat. It's a worm.